Are you tired of working incredibly hard in your early childhood education program and feeling like you're not making any headway, feeling like you're just going around and round in circles? Well, today we are bridging the gap between the neuroscience of brain development and the exhausting reality of what we deal with on a day-to-day basis, though putting out those daily fires and funding gaps. We're going to talk about those things and we're going to talk about how to remedy them, right? By building a sustainable roadmap through vision, mission, and goal planning. Welcome back to the Elevating ECE broadcast, and I'm your host, Beatrice Hutchison, your ECE Excellence Architect. And today we're diving into a topic that often feels like corporate fluff, but it is actually the secret to survival in our industry: vision, mission, and goal setting. In our first episode, if you remember, we talked about that purple cow of neuroscience, right? We talked about that incredible fact that while a brain typically needs 400 repetitions to learn a skill, it only needs 10 to 20 when that happens, when that learning happens through play. But here is the hard truth. It's a wonderful fact, right? But here is the truth, and this is something I've seen over my years of experience in the field. You cannot protect that biological miracle if your program is operating in a state of chaos. That is the exhausting reality of our field. We are constantly, on a day to day basis, working or dealing with staffing issues, working with not having enough funding, working with putting out the daily fires that come up, right? We deal with all of those things, and all of those things could make excellence or our dreams feel and seem unattainable. Today, we are talking about how to stop going in circles, right? How to start building a sustainable roadmap to excellence through vision, mission, and SMARTIE goal planning. We're going to discuss how a clearly defined vision is your best defense against teacher burnout. And January is the perfect time because as we set our January goals or our goals for the new year, we can actually allow those goals to be the gateway to securing everything that our program needs to not just survive, but to thrive. So let's talk about the vision, the antidote to unsustainability. So, right now, 85% of teachers report that their jobs are unsustainable. That's how they feel. We are the number one most burnt out profession in the US. We talked about that last week, with 44% of us feeling that exhaustion often or always. And so, when you are in survival mode all the time, your mission is often just kind of just make it just make it to Friday, or just make it to the end or through the end of the day. And so that is the reality of what we deal with. But a true vision and mission serves as a structural blueprint. It moves your program from being a daycare, a term that's often associated with undervalued labor and poverty level wages, right? To being a center for early brain architecture. It allows you to be seen in a completely different light, right? We move from babysitting into doing something that is very reputable, something that is very needed and very pertinent. So, when you define your mission through the lens of neuroscience, you elevate the professional identity of your staff, right? We're no longer babysitters. Now we're doing something that's really, really important that really does impact the world. And so I know we know that, but we don't often articulate it in that way. So, we're not just watching kids, right? We're facilitating synaptogenesis during a sensitive period where a child's brain has 1,000 trillion synapses, twice as many as an adult, as we talked about last week as well. And so this shift in vision is the first step in moving from a fragile system to a sustainable one. To begin, every program needs an identity. So your mission statement defines your reason for being and the specific need that you are meeting in your community right now. It should be operational and inspirational, acting as a filter for your daily decisions, right? So your mission guides your daily decisions, right? And from that comes your values. And we'll talk about that in another episode. But it should inform your daily decisions. And then on the other hand, you have your vision statement, right? So your vision statement is that's the pinnacle, that's the destination, that's where you're on your way to, right? Your mission tells you how you conduct yourself on your way, right? But then your vision statement is that destination. So it's an audacious goal that vividly describes what your community will look like in about 5 years if you succeed. When constructing these, you need to ask yourself some questions. Who do we serve? And what kinds of future society do we envision for those we serve? But now, let's think about this. How do we move forward toward that vision while managing all the chaos that we have to manage on a day to day basis in early childhood education? We do that by using a framework or developing one or using this framework, implementing it into our program called cascading goals. And so this is a method of ensuring alignment from the top down, where every teacher, every staff member can trace their specific daily achievements directly back to that overarching vision. This level of clarity is vital for sustainability. Everyone needs to be on the same page. Research shows that teams with clear goal experience, right, that have that clarity, they have 20 to 25% improvement, an improvement in their work performance because they feel that their work truly matters. They feel a part of the movement of the vision of this great work that's being done. And when staff can envision a future at your company, employee retention significantly improves. So when they can see themselves up as a part of the larger picture, then it makes them want to stay and makes them really want to be a part of, right? And so that retention that we struggle so much with, we begin to see that significantly improve. Now let's move on and talk about SMARTIE goals, right? And the litmus test. So we're going to talk about those two things now. So to ensure that these goals actually drive excellence, right? They must be SMARTIE. And I'm sure you've heard of SMART goals before. The acronym for SMART is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. But the IE is where true transformation happens. Inclusion means bringing traditionally marginalized people, especially the families that we serve, into the decision making process in a way that shares the power, right? So it encourages and promotes equity. And that equity requires an element of justice that actively seeks to shrink systemic disparities. For an early childhood education program, this might mean not just expanding a program, but doing so with a task force, right? Incorporating those or having representatives from your community, right? But the community reflecting those that you serve, right? So you may want to have your community's race and your culture reflected in this task force, as we'd like to call it. By aligning your mission and your vision that we talked about with your SMARTIE goals, you move the will and the way of your organization toward a future where excellence isn't just a goal, but it's a habitual reality. It's something that we intentionally work on until it becomes a reality. And so we have to ensure that we have those that we are serving reflected in this group, right? That we have them be a part of that goal process, right? So that inclusion and that equity, having it be equitable, having them be a part of that helps us to really be able to serve them better in that aspect. So it's not just the SMART goals that has all of those different aspects that we are so used to and that we understand are important, but it's adding that IE piece that allows us to really be able to serve the community in a much greater way. So now let's talk about the litmus test. How can I apply a litmus test to my goals? So we need to think of some things. What are common behavioral biases that sabotage strategic planning? Because it is a strategic planning process. How do I create a cascading goal system for my staff? And how can I really get it to be actionable steps that are practical, that I can actually implement, right? That are actually attainable. So to apply a test, to your goals, you should evaluate them against a specific set of quality assessment questions designed to ensure that they are actionable, that they are strategic and equitable. The first step is to ask if the goal specifically mitigates potential inequities in both the process and the final outcomes. You must also determine whether achieving the goals represents significant progress towards your organization's mission, ensuring it isn't just busy work, but a strategic move forward, intentionally moving forward strategically. A critical component of this test is verifying that input was gathered from the people most impacted by the goals, activities, and outcomes. That's why I talked about getting people to be a part of that group that are from the community that you serve. And this helps to ensure that the goal is truly inclusive and avoids any type of tokenism by sharing power with those being served. They are part of the team. They have that shared vision. Head Start has what they call the DAPC, right? The delegate agency, or even the parent council committees. Those type of committees, they are the ones that come in, and there's a shared governance, right? There are that governance also with your board, right? There's a shared governance where those from your community, especially your families, are able to come and sit at the table and help with the decision making and help to move forward the program in the right direction. Additionally, you should confirm that the measures of success are clear to everyone involved and that there's a firm deadline. We know who's responsible for what, and that we have that deadline, right? That timeline, so that we can prevent procrastination. We have so many things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, and we can say, oh, I'll put that off until later, right? And so no, we need to have a firm deadline so that we make sure that there's no procrastination, that we put the steps in place that we need to have in place in order to address that goal and to meet that deadline. Finally, your litmus test must address organizational reality. You need to ask yourself some questions like, do we have the capacity? Do we have the systems and the processes needed to achieve this goal? So you want it to be something that's attainable. You don't want it to be something that's completely out of reach. This requires a realistic assessment of available resources, including the people that you have access to, the money, and the time. To further refine the test, you should check for behavioral biases, right? Such as optimism bias, which can lead to underestimating your costs and your overestimating your benefits, right? So you can begin to look at it because you're so excited, so optimistic about it, that you don't look at all of the pieces realistically, right? Or see them for what they are. And so you begin to overestimate the benefits, and you say, oh, they outweigh the cost, but then you underestimate what the costs are, right? And so you need to have a perfect balance there. You want to make sure that you have what you need, right, in order to put the systems and the things in place that you can get the benefits that you're after. By grounding your goals in data rather than your gut feelings, right? Not going based off how we feel, but let's go back to the data. What does the data say about it? What does the data say about the cost and what we're able to afford at this point, right? And so if we can't afford it right now, I don't want you to think that, okay, well, we stop right here, end of conversation. No. There are ways that we can attain funding to do what we need to do, right? And so with working with our vision and mission, it perfectly aligns us, even lines us better with the goals of a lot of these funders that have funding to improve the quality in early childhood programs. Last episode, I talked about the funding being out there, right? And so we're not going to focus on that in this episode, but the funding is out there. And so having our vision, our mission, having our goals set in place, having our values, all of that aligns us perfectly as a program that doesn't just have a wish, right? But we are intentional and we have strategically planned how we want to move our program forward. And so we're not going based off of those gut feelings, right? You want to ensure that the goal is feasible, not merely an unrealistic wish list or hopes that we would like to have, but we want to make sure that it is realistic, not unrealistic. And so, how can we evaluate if our program has capacity for our vision, for what we are wanting to accomplish? What specific metrics help track ECE equity goals, right? What types of tools and what types of things or apps, what things do you need to have in place to properly be able to identify some metrics and to also measure them? How do I support or how do I spot optimism bias in my plans, right? What kind of a gauge do I have for that? How do I create a cascading goal system for staff? So these are questions I want you to think about as you are planning for your goals, right? For your vision, the what you would like to accomplish in some years, right? And be 5 years or however many years you want to set to it. But you want to be working towards something. So you want to have some questions that you're thinking to yourself as you move along this process. So think about this. Let me offer this analogy to you. So, setting a mission and vision for your ECE program without a plan for goal based processes is like programming a beautiful destination into a GPS, but forgetting to put gas in the car. The vision is your destination, but your goals, specifically those tied to helping us acquire the things that we need to thrive and to build legacy, it's our fuel that actually helps us to get there, right? So it's that gas, it's that fuel that help us to get there. The goals give us the strategy, give us the technique, give us the path on how to get where we're going. So don't let your vision and your dreams stay on the drawing board. Don't let them just stay in your head, right? Yes, you let them be in your head. You write them down. You want to write the vision and make it plain, but you want to also not leave it there. You want to design it and you want to build it. Now let's talk about a cascading goal system. To create a cascading goal system for staff, you must implement a structured method of ensuring alignment from the highest level of organizational identity down to individual daily tasks. This process connects the long-term vision to specific actionable objectives for every team member, right? So everyone is on the same page. So, number one, you want to establish the high level foundation. The system begins at the top with the vision and the mission. The vision that's defined as your audacious 5-year goal that provides a vivid description of the future that your organization wants to create. Your mission is how you articulate the organization's reason for being, its essential nature, and the work it does on a day-to-day basis that move you towards that vision. Strategic priorities. You want to develop a multi-year endeavor or endeavors that represent the organization's best path toward achieving that vision, right? Your action steps that's a path that leads you towards achieving that vision. Next, let's talk about these deconstructing priorities into initiatives. So the next step is that you want to translate broad priorities into initiatives, which are specific endeavors intended to achieve specific goals. Initiatives are typically owned by leadership groups and should have concrete deliverables, right? What is it going to accomplish? These components are generally designed to be completed within 1 year, right? And then we do self assessment and we evaluate where we are, we reassess, we revise, and implement, right? So it's that whole cycle. Next, we want to develop individual staff goals. At the bottom of the cascade, you have individual staff members set goals or objectives that lead to the completion of the higher level initiatives, right? And so you want to guide that participation in the goal planning, right? But you want to have some set goals for your individual staff, right? So at every level, even at the bottom of of what you're working on. Next, you want to have traceability. Every staff member should be able to trace their specific achievements back through initiatives and priorities to the overarching vision. Next, framework consistency. The entire organization should follow one goal setting framework, such as the SMARTIE, as we've been talking about, but there are others, and you find out what's the best for your organization. But you do this to ensure cross functional collaboration and to avoid confusing staff, right? If you try to implement too many things, staff don't know what we're following, what are we doing? It brings in a whole lot of confusion. And so if you have momentum going, it definitely takes down the momentum because now everyone is confused. We don't know what we're doing. We don't know where we're going. We don't know what we're working on, right? And so you want to have one clear path that you're using or one framework that you're using. Next, and I mentioned the SMARTIE, but this can apply to whatever you choose. But in talking about the SMARTIE criteria, all individual goals should be specific, measurable, ambitious, realistic, time bound, and then there's that IE, inclusive and equitable. Next, we want to implement a two-way planning process. Goal setting must be a collaborative two-way process rather than strictly top down, right? Not just the head saying what it is and everyone is to follow, but it should be a two-way process, right? So that everyone should be incorporated in that process. And so a top-down strategy would be like your board members or your senior leadership defining and validating those overarching strategies and the plan for the business, right? So those that are not necessarily involved in the day-to-day work are those, are at the head, but then they set the vision and the strategy and the plan. And so, but then when we talk about bottom up ownership, we have staff who should participate in a brainstorming process, right? We should offer an opportunity for that to happen where they can be included in brainstorming to set their own goals within the strategic framework, right? So once the head develops, okay, this is going to be our overarching vision and our mission, the goals, then you develop a strategic framework where you can allow them to also create their goals that are aligned to what the vision and the mission is. And so this builds a stronger sense of ownership because they were a part of developing it. And in my program, we actually did like a survey. We had programs, the different individual sites to kind of vote on what they wanted the mission statement to be, right? So we had them to all participate in that. But what it did was it provided that ownership, that sense of ownership, because this is something that I helped to develop. This is where I'd like to see the agency going, aligned to the vision and mission, of course, right? Aligned to the vision. But this is where I would like to see it go, right? So then there's that ownership that they have, and it allows the managers to identify the strengths and the weaknesses of each team member, right? So then you know how to use them strategically in what you're trying to do. Next is role clarity. That's also very important. Research indicates that providing clear goals and roles can improve staff work performance by 20 to 25% by helping them to focus their efforts in the right direction. Sometimes we put them in place and they're not very clear on what they're supposed to do. And sometimes you have some roles that clash. And so when people are not very sure about what they're going to do, and they're not going to come and ask you, like, what am I supposed to do? Some of them will, right? But many will not, because they don't want to seem like they are not experienced, that they don't understand the role, unless it's an entry level role. But you'll find that those that are in higher roles, that they don't want to necessarily come and ask for the help, because then it means that they don't know the information, right? And so if they have clear roles, clear goals that they're working towards, this helps them to know how to focus, how to implement, how to be intentional and move forward towards the vision. Next, maintain and review the cascade. We talked about cascading goals. So a cascading system is not a set it and forget it activity. It requires ongoing engagement to remain sustainable, right? It helps to promote sustainability. And so you don't just develop it and leave it there, but it's something that is ongoing. It requires that you go back and you engage with it on an ongoing basis. Next, regular check-ins. Discuss your goals and your progress at the start of every week during your one-to-ones and in your team meetings. Talk about the goals that you have weekly. That provides chances. So what do we have? 52 weeks, right? So that's 52 chances to correct the ship. So if it's going in the wrong direction, if we're checking in on a weekly basis, right? If we're doing that, then we can catch it. If it's going in the wrong direction, we can self-correct, right? Compared to having only 4 chances if we only meet, let's say, quarterly, or only one chance to correct it if we only meet on an annual basis. Next, we want to have data driven planning. Before setting our new goals in the cascade, run a retro meeting to analyze data from the past quarters. Identify your gaps and repeat what happened, what worked well, and then correct those things that did not work well. Next, visibility. Write goals down and make them accessible to the whole team, right? You want the whole team to have them. You don't want them to try to memorize them, right? No, let everyone have a copy of it. Individuals are 42% more likely to achieve goals when they are written down and shared with accountability partners, right? We have so many things on our mind, so we don't always remember those things. I believe it's Eric Thomas that says that uh, the paper never forgets, right? Paper never forgets. So if you write it down, it's somewhere where you can refer back to it, right? The Bible talks about writing the vision and making it plain. If it's written down, people know what they're working on. And then if there are others that are sharing with them in that, they can be accountable to one another. Those accountability partners. Next, let's talk about the levels of the cascading system. So, to ensure a robust system, consider designing your goals across 3 different levels, right? So, you want to make sure that they are strategic, overarching long term objectives aligned with the vision. Next, you want to make sure that they're operational, right? So You want them to be focused on human capital and resources needed to support the mission, right? That's again being clear on what you need to be able to accomplish the mission that leads you towards that goal. Next, you want to be tactical, right? So you want to have daily activities and specific implementation plans that help you to achieve those milestones, right? So what are the daily activities and what are the plans? What are those action steps that help us to achieve those milestones? So connecting the dots, a shared accountability. As we wrap up, remember that you aren't in this alone. High quality early childhood education requires shared accountability between employers, between the state, between the funders, between community partners, right? So you're not in this alone, as well as staff. You're not in this alone. We're all in this together. And so sometimes we don't know where to go for help or how to reach out or like who's the right party. So we are left kind of in our own silos, feeling overwhelmed. So if you are feeling overwhelmed by the technical side of all the things, and we talked about developing the mission, the vision, the cascading goals, having all of those, in order to do that or approach that and not feel overwhelmed, you may need someone that can assist you. And so I'm here for you. My coaching doesn't just give you a vision statement so that it's up and it's nice on your wall, but we build systems, AI tools, we provide all types of mental health and educational supports and pedagogical excellence that make your vision actually become a reality, because we don't want to just talk about things and hear it and oh it's wonderful, but we want to move towards action steps and be able to put those things into place, those things that you have in your head and your heart that you've written down. Hopefully you've written your vision down, but you want to be able to have those things come to pass. And I know the just all that we deal with on a day to day, just the mundane work, the just all of the overwhelm that comes along with it, and we get burnt out very easily. I don't want you to think that it is totally out of reach. No, it is attainable. All of that you would like to provide, or the place that you would like your community to be in 5 years or whatever years you assign to it, it can happen. You can make it a reality. It doesn't have to stay a dream. It can come true. And so January is the perfect time, right? Because we're talking about, this is the month that we always talk about goals and resolutions and all of those things. And we often don't make it beyond February, March, right? But we're using, and that's why I don't like to use the term resolution, but we talk about it being goals, because goals are not goals if you don't have the action steps, right? To be able to attain those goals. And so January is about setting the North Star for the rest of the year, right? About what are you after? What are you looking to accomplish in this new year? So don't just set the goal to survive. No, not to just make it through Friday, not to just make it through the day, not to just make it through another school year, right? You want to be able to set goals to thrive and to secure your program, and also whatever is needed for your program, so that you can build legacy, right? Not just to be something that is fleeting, but you want to, and not just surviving, you want to be able to thrive and to also build legacy. And so you can visit our website. I do have another download for you. You can also check out the link in the description, but it's a vision and goal setting toolkit for ECE directors. And so I know it says for ECE directors, but if you are an entrepreneur or someone that is looking to open up your own program, whether it be center-based, if you're looking to become a family child care owner as well and have to provide and be a provider home, this also applies to you. Even if you are looking to start an after school program, right, a disabilities program, whatever it is, everyone needs to have their vision, and they need to have their mission, and they need to have goal sets to get to where they are looking to go to attain that vision, right? That pinnacle. And so this particular tool, it includes a checklist for aligning your goals, your program goals with current opportunities, right? And so that includes grant opportunities, staffing opportunities, all of those sorts of things, because there's so many pieces to the work that we do. And if you start there and you see that you need some more help, or you like to take a deeper dive, you can book a strategy session where we can talk about the work that you are looking to do, or that you are doing, right, but want to enhance it to somewhat. You can certainly book a strategy call with me, 30 minutes, free of charge, to help you just really develop and implement your individualized improvement plan, right? So what is it that you need to do and put in place, and what supports do you need to get your program to the next level? Because we're talking about thriving and setting up legacy. And so let's give those, we talked about that 1,000 trillion synapses, right? The foundations that they deserve, those little minds, they deserve everything that you have as a part of your vision. And so don't forget to be a part. Don't forget that this is attainable. It is something that you can accomplish. And so I want to leave you with this thought. Think of your vision as a distant mountain peak, and your vision as the compass that keeps you on the right path. Cascading goals are the specific markers you place along the trail to measure your progress. If you only have a compass but no mountain, you'll walk forever with no destination. If you see the peak but have no compass, you'll get lost in the woods. SMARTIE goals ensure that as your party climbs, you aren't just moving fast, but you are leaving no one behind and ensuring the path is accessible to everyone in your group. I'm your host, Beatrice Hutchison, your ECE Excellence Architect, and I'll see you next time. Until we meet again next time, go and be great.